Welcome to Prospecting Special Topics. This special topic is focused on special event prospecting. This webinar will focus on an overview of the value of building prospect plans for special events. There will be a focus on best practices for pre-event briefing sessions on key attendees and post-event follow-up briefing sessions. There will also be a focus on assigning next steps for sustaining the momentum with attendees that were identified as key prospects during the event or even before. There will be a focus on the value of special events, an overview of the new industry view of special events and prospecting. There will be Welcome to the webinar, Special Event Prospecting. Today's webinar will provide an overview of the value of building prospect plans for special events. There will be a focus on best practices for pre-event briefing sessions on key attendees and post-event follow-up briefing sessions. There will also be some information on assigning next steps for sustaining the momentum with your attendees after the event. Today's focus will focus on the value of special events, an overview of the new industry view of special events and prospecting, and pre-planning sessions, best practices, as well as best practices, again, for post follow-up sessions. Let's focus a little bit on fundraising realities. So some statistics. We compete with over 1.5 million charities for awareness and funding. Annual events account for the largest share of fundraising revenue for most charities. Even though individual giving leads to sustainability, events still make up the largest share of fundraising revenue. But sometimes they have the lowest ROI. Your event attendees are hardest to convert to other giving, and we'll talk about why and how to overcome that. And a lot of times donor loyalty may be to your event, not actually to your organization. It's the place to be, the event of the season, that sort of thing, but not necessarily focused on why they're really there for your mission and for your organization. And special events do have higher costs, therefore lower ROI. So the view and role of special events has shifted from black tie dinners and charity auctions to strategic regional and networking events for prospect identification, cultivation, and movement. Special event attendees are, in fact, prospects. Increasing individual giving leads to sustainable fundraising programs. And changing your view and approach to your special event attendees helps move them into your viable prospect pipeline for future giving beyond the event. And so we're going to talk about how to make that happen. And it's really about changing the special event donor's experience from transactional to transformational. So if you were to do a from to, and you're from, you invite your donors to an event, they receive some mission information, you're selling tables and tickets, there's a lot of emphasis on logistics to get the event off the ground and completed, and it's an annual event. But where we're trying to get to is to invite them to share and join in the mission, have it be a meaningful experience, be about investing in your mission. It's about populating tables with qualified prospects, having the right people at the table that you want to hear about your mission and feel that connection and have opportunities to move those forward. It's more about strategy. Why are we having this event? How do we get the right people there? And how do we build those relationships to lead to multi-initiative and multi-year commitments beyond just the event? So it's really important to ask, why am I holding this event? What aspects of the fundraising cycle will this target? Will it target identification to allow prospects to self-select by their attendance? Those may be people in your pipeline that you haven't quite gotten to, but if invited to an event and they show up, then that may be starting to create an identification type focused event. It's about cultivation, raising awareness, and strengthening relationships. It's about raising funds. Is it about stewardship to say thank you? Is it a recognition event? Sometimes your events can be all of these things, and you can have all of those types of prospects and donors at the table. Um, but it's really important, you should never begin to organize an event unless you have a clear idea of what you want to achieve as a result. Really at the end of the day, events are to build a pipeline and to raise money. So if we were to look at a relationship path for attendees under a new vision and about building meaningful relationships in a pre-event phase, from a fundraising perspective, it could be about screening prospects, looking at former guests, past transactional donors that you want to warm up through an event, having a prospect plan in your pre-event phase to get the right people there, because you're wanting them to feel a connection with the mission when they get to the event, having a meaningful experience while they're there and feeling that connection and wanting more. And then in your post-event follow-up, it really is all about the follow-up. Did they have a good experience? Did we achieve what we wanted to in the event with our donors? Post-event is all about long-term engagement as advocates, leader, and turning those event attendees into major donors. So let's talk a little bit about before the event, the pre-planning. So when you pre-plan for an event, it's really about pre-event debrief. So it's about identifying significant guests and those who might require extra attention to ensure that they're well cared for during the event. It's about assigning table captains to each VIP prospect or donor table and providing briefing notes about VIPs for each of these prospects at a table captain's table, and making sure that table captain feels briefed on these people. Briefing notes should include things like interests of the VIPs, people the table captain should introduce them to, subjects or people to avoid if they're a staunch Republican. Make sure you're not saying pro-democratic things if it might set them off, or making sure that if they've had a recent loss, you're not asking about the person that they had a recent loss about. If being just really careful and strategic about the conversations that you do have, and making sure that you don't create an uncomfortable experience. Those briefing notes are really important. What do you already know about your prospect that your table captain should know about to make sure that they're having a good experience at the event? So-and-so doesn't like Mary and Mary doesn't like John, to make sure that Mary and John aren't sitting together. Those types of things are really important. It's important to review these briefing notes with your team captain and answer any questions and provide additional support so that they feel like they can accomplish what they've been asked to do during the event. And then assigning your prospect action steps to those table captains to complete with their assigned VIPs during the event. Make sure that, John meets the CEO and Mary meets our board chair, and make sure you introduce John to our Youth of the Year, because that would be really meaningful to John. Those types of things during the event. Make sure you're asking about, next steps too. Really love to, set them up for, really like for you to come see our club if they're showing that kind of interest, making sure you have some talking points and are achieving those next steps, so that your table captains know when they're going into the event what's expected of them and what they need to accomplish during that event. It's more than, just attending an event and, seeing a great program. It's really about those relationships and those people in the room during the event, because at the end of the day, we're trying to take those event attendees and turn them into major gift prospects. During the event, it's about transforming the guest experience from transactional to transformational. So some things to think about with connecting with your guests. It starts from the point of arrival with those first impressions, making sure there's guides to get them to the table, that they feel really welcome. Guides a lot of times are your kids that have them help with getting people to their tables, mission champions, your CEO, your board chair, your board members, whoever your mission champions might be, making sure that they're front and center when your guests are coming in and they're feeling the mission from the moment they arrive. It's about telling our story, first person testimonials, our future need, not just our past results. And again, it's about our champions, making sure the board's clear on their role in the event, and what's going on at the CEO or president's table. In addition, it's really about divide and conquer, make sure we're meeting and greeting our assignments, so our table captains are getting out there and doing that, having what they call shadows, just staff to make sure that the needs are met and making sure that our table captains are getting in front of those people, making sure they know who they're supposed to be meeting with, even stepping in and making those introductions if the meet and greets are possibly getting awkward, but always making sure you're kind of keeping an eye on everything that needs to happen during that. This is usually development staff that's kind of shadowing the event. Strategic seating. So, with prospect research report, knowing, I really want, Mary and Betty to sit next to each other. They're really involved in other youth serving organizations. They raise a lot of money, and we really want them to be introduced to each other at this event and talk through some of our priorities and things. Let them hear about those things. Through knowing who should be sitting near whom, then you can do that. Having anchors at the table, those people that are great at conversation and keeping the table going and feeling engaged. That's always really important to have your best communicator, most social and focused person at the table. And it's about information gathering. So as you're learning stuff through conversations, keeping kind of track of what you're learning during that process. And it really is a night of fundraising, so making sure that anything that's going on in terms of a fundraising is connected to the mission, and always bring it back to the mission so that they're feeling that and having a really meaningful experience, and providing opportunities for investment, whatever those might be during your event. And then after your event, it's really about debriefing and next steps. So some best practices for a special event debrief, and this isn't about, was the food good? Did we like the flowers? This is really about the prospects. So if possible, it is invaluable to have your fundraising team debrief right after the event concludes, meaning the night of the gala, after after the event, after the golf outing. It can be a 30-minute meeting in a ballroom, back of an office, at the park, just to kind of talk through what happened. If it's not possible, then the meeting needs to commence quickly after the event, the next day, the next couple of days, so that you're capturing everything as it has happened, so that you don't allow enough time to lapse to where you start to forget what happened during that event. Those debrief meetings should be focused on key conversations, deciding on key next steps, going to follow up with a phone call, invite to do a club tour, those types of things. Have each fundraising team member run through their contact list and share what they were able to accomplish. Did the table captains accomplish their next steps during the event? And then what should be the follow-up activity? Usually when the event finishes, a lot of times we underestimate the follow-up activity, and that's really where the real success is generated. It's those relationships that are built during that event when they're feeling the mission, they're feeling all of that, and to have timely follow-up through personal engagement is the way to bring those prospects and donors closer to you when they're already in that place from having that experience at your event. So making sure you have a post-event plan. So making sure you're thanking the guests for coming. If you upload souvenir photos to a website, put a report of the event in your newsletter. If the event has generated some cultivation leads, then follow up with them promptly. Call to get feedback on an event. Schedule an in-person meeting. Invite them to a club tour. It's just really important to remember that the event isn't complete until the follow-up is done, because that's where the real action happens. So building long-term engagement plan post-event. These are some of the highlights of what the focus should be. It's really about the potential to move a donor from a transaction or transitional place to a transformational relationship. It's about efficiency and effectiveness with your follow-up. It's really important to schedule your post-event debrief sessions before the event takes place, so it's already on your calendar. So if you're going to do it right after the event or you're going to do it the next week, making sure it's already scheduled so that everyone knows that it's an expectation. Always making sure you're debriefing with staff, board, volunteers for clues, strategies, and next steps. Creating multiple touch points. It's not just a receipt and a thank you letter. Personal calls and visits to major gift donors and prospects. To carry on for long-term engagement, it's about developing champions, leaders, and donors and sustaining the momentum. Get in front of as many donors and prospects as you can, individual meetings, receptions, etc. Build on the case for support presented at the event, so making sure you're continuing that connection to what was presented at the event and moving that forward. Mobilizing your board as mission champions. Identify options for future engagement and support and clarifying next steps, and build the individual journey. And some key development team actions that help make special events part of your major gift strategy. These are things to really focus on, and that is to view events in 3 equally important parts: the pre-event preparation, the night of engagement, and the post-event follow-up. Again, efficiency and effectiveness are key, making sure you're being very timely in what you do. Focusing on strategy first, logistics second. So strategy about your prospects, logistics, food, table seating, all that stuff second. Demystifying the process, preparing, training, and debriefing your board and CEO. Eliminating talking heads, meaning make sure you have your best storytellers front and center so that you're really having a meaningful engagement about the mission. Build mission connections to create donor loyalty to the organization, not the event. The stronger the connection they feel, the more loyalty they start to build towards your organization and the less towards the event of the season. It's about your organization at the end of the day, not the event. Empowering board to make a difference and not just fundraise. Create clear options for post-event engagement. Here's some clear things that anybody can be talking about during the event or following up with: club tour, meet with a kid and a parent, whatever it might be. And then it's really important to celebrate the success of the event and anything that comes out of the event. I just want to thank you for listening today. There's some handouts available on bgca.net for special event prospecting. This presentation recording will be out there, as well as some things about post-event briefings and documents like that. Thank you.